We're talking about drones. We're in the air. We're flying above at a bird's eye view in a way that 15 years ago seemed like only the biggest of production budgets could go out and get a helicopter with a gyro on it and go in the sky. And now, really even with a drone, like I'm flying a drone that's I think a Phantom 4 version 2. It's an older drone. I fly that thing once or twice a week, and it consistently amazes me at the kind of footage that I'm able to get, and it's just a lot of fun. So we've got a great panel assembled of folks who have done some interesting projects with drones, whether that's mapping or whether that's creating video, but we also have a guest with some expertise. I'd just like to welcome Tim Kimberling to the panel. Hey, Tim. He comes to us with 25 years of editing experience and now is kind of morphed that into being a commercial drone pilot. So this is it's going to be great to lean on your expertise for this hour as we start to explore the topic of drones. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you're doing in that space?
Sure. Thank you again for having me. I feel like I have a lot of knowledge, but we're always learning about this. So keep that in mind as we go to our questions and things that we're going to be talking about today. Yeah, you mentioned my editing experience. I freely admit that I learned how to fly drones because it gets me out of the edit suite, because nobody wants to be locked in these rooms for days and weeks at a time, but that's part of the job too. So anyway, yeah, I've been flying drones for about 10 years. So I've watched a lot of the organizational efforts, especially here in the United States, to help make things safer for all of us to fly safer. So I've watched a lot of the technology grow. I like to say that I was flying back when it was the wild, wild west. I never really built my own like a lot of guys did, but I've always been flying the prosumer consumer models for the work that I do. So again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, the one thing that I wanted to kind of open up the discussion with was just a lot of us, when we go into thinking about drones, you've got a couple big names. You've got obviously DJI is kind of the behemoth in the room, but you've also got folks like Autel who make very reasonable or very competitive drones. The third-party apps that can control the DJI, to me, are some of the most exciting things, because I forever was just, okay, I'm going to go up, I'm going to open up the DJI 4.0 or whatever the Go app is, and I'm going to fly around, and this is going to be fun. Oh, this is cute. And I do the little, the point of interest and the orbits and all that stuff. And then someone on office hours, it may have been Alex, recommended that I check out the software Flight from Drone Deploy. Now, when I first looked at Drone Deploy, I thought to myself, golly, I have no business spending that kind of money. They wanted like $300 a month to not to use the software, but to process the images that you captured. Once I found out that I could do a repetitive flight plan again and again and again using their flight app without needing to pay any money, and then I could, if I had another way to process those images, I could do it. That's what really opened my eyes and got us talking about this in the councils and on the back end. So I have here on my Mac, I'm running the iPad app just for demonstration purposes. So this is what that flight app looks like. I have here's a map that I drew over a building that's under construction right now that I wanted to take progress photos of. And I put it at like 250 feet, and then it goes out and it takes 380 images, and it does it in a little crosshatch pattern. And that's intentional. If you were just trying to stitch an aerial photo, maybe you wouldn't need to do this, this kind of crosshatch pattern kind of thing. But when you're trying to use it from a photogrammetry point of view and you're trying to stitch those images together, that crosshatch becomes really important. So what I was able to do is I would go back once a week or every other week, and I would say I'd take a aerial map. I'd go to photos where I've gone and positioned camera angles around a focal point, and then I'd have a video plan. And the same way, this video plan just goes and does the same exact route every single time. So all of a sudden, I'm not thinking anymore so much about the flight part of it, because I know that the route is safe. I've flown the route 50 times. I don't need to I don't need to go there again and again and again and be always nervous about, is there a tree there or is there a wire there? If I've gotten myself, 2 degrees of safety away from the closest obstacle, I don't need to worry about that a whole lot. But then after all those images are taken, I was able to take those 400 some images and then go ahead and create a point cloud. And this was a 100 million point cloud where I have a model of the building that's now to scale that I can measure off of if I'm trying to make a decision about something here on the site. So if you're doing any sort of site surveying before you're going out somewhere, this can be really powerful. And you can see up here, this is called WebODM. This is kind of an open source version of the Drone Deploy-esque. It's not from Drone Deploy, it's an open source thing. And if you want to compile it yourself, you can go into Docker and install this. Or you can pay them $100 to make an installer package. It's up to you how you want to roll it. But this took, 400 some images, 7 gigabyte, 436 images. It took about 2 hours to process. And then it came out with this point cloud, but it also came out with, hey, here's a report of all of the photos that you took. Here's a very high resolution aerial photo. The moire is there because it hasn't rendered at full resolution yet because it's like a 2 gigabyte TIFF file. Here's a depth map of what's going on. I was able to estimate like how much dirt was in this pile. Things that from a utility point of view from drones I never thought. But then I took that point cloud because it also created a texture model. I took this point cloud and then you can hit download assets and download a textured model. It downloaded an OBJ with all the texture files that I was actually able to use Reality Converter to turn it into a USDZ file and then create a 3D model in SketchUp that is not perfect from a rendering point of view, but to use this as a base from which that I can use to go and model this warehouse, I would have never in a million years been able to do that. And so I'm more than anything, I'd really like to kind of open up our minds to, it's not just using the stock built-in software. There are so many of these creative applications outside of the built-in things that can be really powerful. And I'll open it up to anybody else too before we hop into questions. So if you have kind of a cool way that you're utilizing drones or want to give some kind of basis for your point of view in this discussion, please feel free to hop in. So let's we can pop back to that. I'm sure these are gonna the stories will come out as we're going. Why don't we hop into that first question? Alexander, go ahead.
First one's from the QR code. Marielle, Jusha, Mira, and Woblo's asking, question about drones when working with them in office spaces. How do you control them instead of just letting them flit about like they want to do? Rather be a queen than a wannabe.
Very nice. Ronnie?
Well, first and foremost, disable the GPS because indoors is really bad for GPS receptions, especially if you are in areas where the GPS spoofing is popular. That makes it even worse. So on DJI, it's called ATTI mode, which is really helping. There is a few other features as well on newer drones, which have a down-face camera, which is called a visual positioning system that can be very good to use. Just make sure that your floor is not covered with white papers laying out on the floor. At least fix them down with some gaffer's tape and make sure they don't move. Ask me how I know. So be creative, but be careful. Also use the cinema mode, which makes the drone operate at slower pace, and just train in a safe area. Make sure there are no people, at least not kids. And since this is office space, there's probably not that much kids around. And make sure that you train a little bit and do not have full stick movements. Be very careful on your movements and take it slow. There could be situations in your living room where you take out a lamp or something. That's also good to know. If you use prop guards, that will help you and not have your wife scream at you later on when she sees the lamp is gone. So there are a few tricks that you can use, but first and foremost, be very careful. This can be hurtful for people if you are not watching out.
Tim?
Yeah, I was going to follow up, Ronnie. That's perfect. And something else that most people don't realize too, I've flown indoors plenty of times. I've gotten very confident about it. But what you don't always calculate is the prop wash. And it doesn't matter if it's, a small drone or a bigger drone. I've flown both of these inside, and prop wash is a big factor. And so even if you're in a large room, but you're coming across something or getting up close to even a desk, I've flown over some desks, and it will move your drone and affect your shot, or just affect the lamp that your wife is going to scream at you about. So I just wanted to chime in with that. Don't forget prop wash.
And just curious, Tim, is that an Inspire behind you, or what have you got there?
Yeah, that's an Inspire 2, and then the latest Mini Pro 4, I think it is. So just kind of a juxtaposition of the two far parts of the spectrum of hardware that we sometimes deploy.
Yeah, just as a general note, Mary Ellie, I think if you have the ability to adjust the sensitivity, turn it to all the way slow. If there's not a default cinema mode that's just going to take it, make it so that you, even if you try really hard, that thing's not going to move very fast, because it allows you to make those, if you're making those little fine adjustments with a little tiny joystick, whether you've got one of those Mavic Cines or you've got a big Inspire, you're still just making those very, very, very little movements, because ultimately you have to be concerned about safety of people. You have to be concerned about the lamp in the living room and your reputation with your spouse. And you have to be concerned with the safety of the drone. I mean, I've put a drone in water where I was flying too close to the surface of the water, and I thought, I'm going to get this really cool helicopter shot where it's going to be right on the horizon, and then all of a sudden I caught a pocket of air that caused the drone to move in a way, and next thing you know, it's still 300 feet down somewhere. There's a bounty on it, but the dive team hasn't come back with it yet. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Yeah, another thing, if you're using the visual positioning system for indoor use, please make sure you have enough light. And sometimes we would like to capture the cinematic scenes with the light in the scene that are low, or kind of making the right the scene lighted in the right way. But that could affect the camera's vision and make it difficult for the camera to actually expose right and to use that as a navigation aid. So if you're using the visual positioning systems that are available on most newer drones, I would say, that have camera downward, please make sure you have the floor surface or the surface that you're flying over lit enough. That is really important.
Go ahead, Rian.
Yeah, guys. Prop wash was the evil arch nemesis to me. This is the outcome.
Oh no.
Right. So I was flying the drone. This was Christmas Eve, like last year, flying it around a lamppost to try and do this 360 shot of the guys below. And while it was going around, it came very close to some lines, to a fiber line. One of the props hit the line. Within less than a second, it hit the lamppost, and it came flying downwards, past my head, hit some guy on his shoulder, and the blade cut him 3 times. So, we need to really be careful about that. Mm-hmm. And that, because I think it was, as you said, the prop wash from the lamppost, it kind of just pushed it a little extra, and that was the end of it. So I totally agree, Tim. We really need to be cognizant of what's around, this space.
That's right.
It also makes you think about whenever I'm very nervous to fly inside, because I think about all the obstacles that could be there and the ways that the mistakes that I could make that might, be the end. Because just if you don't carefully plan things like turning off your GPS mode and turning off any of the automatic things if that drone doesn't have, view of the sky, all of that guidance is actually gonna hurt you. What it makes me think of too is there was I think we talked back in August, there was this crazy shot in Las Vegas where this drone was like flying through people and buildings, and it seemed like the most impossible shot. And I remember when we talked about it on here, you're just like, how do you actually go and execute that shot? I don't know. Tim, did you see this?
Yeah, and see, this is one of those. I've barely dabbled into the FPV world. We all know what that is, right? With the goggles, that kind of shot. That's how you get these kind of things. It's a smaller scale drone, which first off can be a lot safer. Let's say, we don't want to talk about hitting people, but it can happen, particularly when you're doing a choreographed move like that. But that particular shot, the whole thing through the bar, there was the famous, is this the bowling alley one? No, there's the one that's also at a bowling alley. The same kind of thing. You have to have, in my world, I would say a producer, and we're going to set this all up and choreograph it so everybody knows what's going to be happening when. There's a famous shot for the Dallas Cowboys, the same thing. They fly it in and around the stadium and then come into the locker room and guys are lifting weights and it's going through. There's the only word I can say for that is choreography. There's a lot of pre-planning that goes into something like that. That's not a candid shot that's just going to happen, like, oh, let's go get a nice, cool FPV shot of your restaurant because it's a beautiful night and there's some cool people here. It takes a little pre-planning, if you know what I mean.
Well, and really, it's a testament more. It seems like it's more of a testament to the coordination of the producers than it was. The piloting's impressive, but also to have that many people understand what was going on and not.
That's right.
Say, oh my goodness, there's this thing that's flying around. Like, what's going on?
Right. You don't want people pointing and looking and things like that. That's what makes it look so real. So in the film production and cinematography world, that was a perfectly executed layout shot. I know the bowling alley one that I keep talking about, they have a nice behind the scenes and they go through a whole thing where, they've got radios and they're cueing people, it's coming here, it's going there. And that way everybody knows their place and can get to point A to point B to make the shot look real.
Alexander?
And Tim, with that example of that shot with Vegas, you're talking about choreography. I don't know anything about drones, but if they're practicing that with GPS, do we have the technology? Can you record a predetermined flight path to automate it? So once you've practiced it, you can just push a button, tell the drone, okay, this is the flight plan, and then it just does that perfectly?
That's a good question, Alexander, because honestly, in the FPV world, no, you cannot. There is some GPS that's involved, but as you see from that shot that you guys were showing, that CJ was showing, it starts outside, so it's going to have GPS. But as we were just talking about, once you go inside, you're going to lose that. So that is all pilot stick skill at that point. He's going to fly that line over and over and over as many times as it is needed to get the shot. The only drones that really have that point-to-point perfect, and I say perfect, where you could recreate it, is the Inspire 3, the newer version of this. I forget what they call the technology, but you basically can redo a jib shot over and over and over with that. But that's using GPS. I don't think that works inside as well. So I think I'm answering your question, Alexander. It's a combination of both. Pilot skill, because there isn't GPS once that camera moves inside.
There's really a difference between you could think about it as a helicopter shot, but you also can think about it as a jib shot. You can think about it as a tripod that you can't rig up in that particular place.
That's right.
And that kind of, you once you get yourself into that mindset, it definitely changes things up a little bit. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Well, inside is really difficult to program a shot. I wouldn't do it, and in our country and in most of Europe, this is actually kind of illegal if people are supposed to be in the shot in the bar inside. Outside, it's a little bit different story. You can have ground-based DJPS stations. I'm not sure what they are called, but I've seen setups where
RTK?
You can have you can have almost centimeter precision programmed into the flight plan and have the DJI or the drone repeat that exact plan hundreds of times if you needed to. So and that needs extra hardware on the ground that has to be calibrated, etc. So it's possible.
Next question.
Next one's from Jeremy Murray in St. John, New Brunswick. This is a strange question. Have you seen any control systems for drones that would allow an individual to fly with one hand?
Ronnie?
Well, DJI, again, is the market leader, just like it is. They have this motion controller, which is mostly developed for FPV flying, but can also be used on a plethora of other devices from DJI. They have a version 1 and a version 2, and I think they also have a version 3 now for the newest Airs, etc. So that's a one-hand controller that you can actually just use the movement. It's have a internal gyro, like your phone has, and you can use that as a controller. In addition to that, there are some apps that actually can be used in the same way, where you use the internal gyro and compass inside the phone to do the same thing. I wouldn't trust that as much. I've tested it and a little bit finicky and could be ending your drone life sooner than you would like to.
Courtney?
Yeah, they just announced DJI Neo, which is their new little drone, that it has a variety of control methods. One of it is no controller at all. You just set it on what to do, and it does facial recognition. It goes out and does what it does. And I think it also recognizes hand gestures. It also has a mode where you can put it in using the DJI Fly app, so you can use it in your phone in one hand, and as Ronnie said, use the gyros in the phone to detect movement, and then you can guide it that way. You can also talk to it. It takes verbal commands, so you can tell it to come back home or circle or give it instructions on methods of doing its pre-programmed flights. So you might look into that. It's only $199. So since our wonderful Senate turned down the DJI ban, which made it through the House, they were going to ban all DJI drones. Did you hear about that? Well, 2 days ago, the Senate just rejected that bill that was passed the House to ban all DJI drones. There would have been a huge outcry in the nation, like 1,000 voices crying out in the dark.
From the sky. Rian?
I just want to be a little cheeky, Courtney. So imagine if it takes voice controls and you don't have a controller, maybe you could tell it, follow me, and run away with someone's drone.
Next question.
From Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand. Given that drone racing is a thing, are the TV and movie production companies looking at that market for pros? I mean, this Cole Clark video shows delicate flying through their facility.
Tim?
Yeah, I mean, we were kind of touching on it earlier, and I'm just going to speak. I mean, what he's asking, what Peter's asking, absolutely. Within our cinematography world, of course, I live in the Midwest, and my experiences, as I said earlier, are limited because we bought the equipment and just haven't had the need for it with our clients. But that being said, it is certainly a style of photography that is wanted, needed. I mean, it's that shot that people want for certain things. So I just say in my industry, for sure, it is a wanted and needed thing that somebody will pay for.
Next question.
Håkan Fors in Stockholm, Sweden is asking, I have a DJI Mini 4 Pro with the RC2 Smart Controller. Is there any additional O4 unit that I could use to broadcast a live clean feed from the DJI Mini 4 Pro?
Ronnie?
No, not that I know of. But if DJI is listening in, please make such a unit and send it to me first so I can test it.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to say my experience with the Mini is limited because I just got it, but there are other drones that have that. I forget which controllers do. I know we have a Mavic Air 2S that has an HDMI out on it, but my experience with it is it's been lagging. So there's a little latency that's not cool, not only for the downlink for a video signal, but also for the pilot. It affects the actual screen that you're watching. So to me, that's a no-go.
Rian?
In the old controller, I can't remember the name, the original one that pops up when you put the phone in for the Air 2. Yeah, Tim? Yeah, there's a way you could do RTMP. So what we would have done is taken that, pointed it up on like a Raspberry Pi that has a RTMP server on it, and then that would pull the video. You send it out from the Raspberry Pi to a media player. We were able to get up the latency down to 3 seconds, which isn't, really the best way. But I know myself and oh my gosh, I forget the name. Myself and someone else were working on a solution for us. Josh, yeah, sorry about that. I forget him. So yeah, myself and Josh were working on a solution with a hardware box, and we got it down to 1 second.
Oh, wow.
So 1,000 milliseconds, literally. So we had the drone and pointed, and you can count like 1, 2.
Yeah.
By the time you said 1, it was there on the screen. Perfect HDMI output. And I think the box costs like $150 US. So that's another option that we're looking into. Trust me, we will get it on the shows very soon.
Well, and we know that DJI can do it because I can attest the Inspire 2, it's really the only reason I keep it around is because we do some broadcast work here in the Midwest, and there is no latency on its light bridge. I think it's a secondary light bridge that they have in that one. Comes out from a second controller, HDMI into an SDI converter or a decimator or whatever you need. And we run it fiber to a satellite truck, and it broadcasts 1080p with no latency. But not everybody can afford or need that kind of hardware.
Ronnie?
Yeah, and I don't know for sure, but I think Håkan in Sweden is thinking of the 04, the newest protocol, which is both lower latency, more range, quicker, better picture, etc., etc. So the only way to do it today is to use the standalone transmission and utilize the 04 protocol there. That way you can put another camera. You can have a big Sony on top of your drone, and the drone needs to be bigger, and the batteries have to be bigger, and it's more dangerous. But as of now, today, there is no remote control that can downlink the 04 protocol, which is actually the thing we need now. So DJI, hurry up, we need it.
And coming in from the chat, Mickey mentions that a lot of broadcasts use a VisLink from the drone to the ground, either using 5G or UHF to get that transmission. Next question.
Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri is asking, how do you choose which drone is the right bird for the job? Would you use a small Maverick Cine or use an Inspire for an outdoor shoot?
Tim?
Yeah, it's always the question that we as our drone pilots here at Spot, we always have to ask ourselves those things. Sometimes it's as simple as, hey, this is I call it a run and gun shoot. If I'm going to be out there, we do a lot of ag work here in St. Louis. So therefore, if I'm going to be helping with a GoPro or doing a little audio on the side, sometimes I just want a Mavic, something that can easily be moved from place to place, easily charge the batteries, easily get from here to there, and gets the shots that you need. A lot of times with technology in the drones, we've learned about batteries. To me, that's the biggest improvement. So a Mavic compared to my Inspire that you see behind me here, the Mavic will fly for 30 minutes, whereas that Inspire has about 15 to 20 minutes. So I always base it on what I know the shots are going to be. If there's not a shot sheet or some sort of setup preset where we're going to know what we're going to be shooting, then I love the Mavic because that's an easy to move around. We're going to go from here to there and get things done. The Inspire 2, which is part of our tools, has a way better camera than the Mavics. So sometimes if I know that there's a shot sheet and we're going to be doing this and over to another shot or something like that, I'll choose that just because it is a better sensor, better camera. So the imagery is so much better. Also, the Inspire 2, if it's a little bit windy outside, the Inspire 2 holds in the wind a lot better than a Mavic or a Mavic 2 or any of the smaller drones. So that's my opinion, and it's something that we ask ourselves about on every job.
Ronnie?
Yeah, I have a story from the Arctic parts of the world. So that's very high up north at 79 degrees north. When you are charging your batteries and you put them in the drone, they are 100%. And when you take off and are getting ready for the perfect client shot, the $1 million shot, which is called, You get the shot, and immediately you start looking after the drone, and you find it crashed to the ground. So actually, we got this 2-second clip that we were able to use for this client. The cost was a little bit higher than for the production, but Arctic is Arctic.
Yeah, you definitely have to think about how does temperature affect your battery life. The other thing that you need to think about is this something that I'm renting for a specific shoot, or is this something that I'm going to invest in? And you have to think, where is the majority of my business? If you need something that is going to be flexible, that a smaller crew can go out and manage, maybe you do want to have something like a Mavic Cine so that you can still get the ProRes recording, you can still get the high quality, a reasonably high quality image. It's not going to be the same as the Inspire, but it's also going to draw a lot of less eyeballs than the Inspire just because of the sheer size of the thing. Next question.
From Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana, what are the advantages of using a 249-gram drone? Are there situations where it can be used when a heavier drone cannot?
I think the battery life concerns are definitely in there. You have to think about it's kind of like a strength to weight ratio, almost just like we spoke about a couple minutes ago. That Inspire is a lot heavier, so the amount of payload that it's carrying from a battery perspective is only going to be able to last about half the time. So it's a lot. To me, it's more to do with battery life, and then also Tim had mentioned the wind considerations. Courtney?
Yeah, Tim can probably speak a lot more professionally on this than I can, but it's the licensing issue. Below 250 grams doesn't require an FAA license. So you're much freer to fly without restriction. It also doesn't require the identifier for the phone, the digital identifier. So, Tim, what other requirements are avoided by going under 250 grams?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Courtney. I mean, that was part of why we got into it. That's why I put this one out there. I freely admit the camera quality on the 249 grams is less than what I'm used to and for certain clients. But we bought into the 249s last year because of international travel. We were taking some drones to Mexico City. I recently just got back from Japan. Everything that you need, or everything that is required, fits into that 249, and so it's okay to bring it across borders in most countries. I don't say every country. You have to look up those specific laws for every country that you might be traveling to, but we definitely did it for international travel. Secondary to that, which I think is kind of nice, I don't know if this has to do with the question per se, but they're so much quieter. If you're trying to do kind of a shoot where you don't want a lot of people looking up or looking over at it, I've been able to take it off, 10, 15 feet away from somebody, and nobody turns around and looks at it. If you guys know what I mean, they tend to make a loud noise like a swarm of bees, and a lot of people start to look at them. So something nice about the 249s is they're quiet.
And Ronnie? Can't hear you, Ronnie.
Yeah, and for content providers that actually are doing kind of moto vlogging or similar, the smaller drones are obviously smaller to put in your pocket or in the pannier of your motorcycle. I've been thinking about doing that. I have my action cameras on the motorcycle as well, but having a small drone when you don't have to think of big stuff. I have my Mavic, I have a Phantom, and we have different type of drones, but having it almost in your inner pocket, that's an intriguing thought. And make sure that you don't put prop covers on all those 249 drones, because they will go over the 249 magical gram limit. So be careful of that.
Next question.
Next question is from Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When should you jib rather than drone? To jib or to drone?
To jib or to drone?
I would say I would jib a camera when it's live and going to imag or similar, or part of a thing that needs to be really, really low latency. And of course, if it's close to the ground. And another thing is if it's over an audience, we always tend to think jibs instead of drones. even outside, it's more secure to use a jib than a drone. And it's those things is the first one I would think of.
Courtney?
If you're recording sync sound and you want to start with a big close-up of a talent, you want to be on a jib because the drone's going to be making too much noise for the person to deliver dialogue cleanly without hearing the drone in the shot. If you, of course, need to go up higher than about 12 to 15 feet or 20 feet, depending on the size of your jib, then you want to go to the drone.
Depending on the cut of your jib. Tim?
I think we talked about I forget what the terminology is, but you can set tracks and courses, I think is what DJI calls it, where you can go from point A to point B and set a time frame. It's kind of like setting up a drone shot that you can theoretically do over and over and over again. I've never found it to do exactly the same path every time. So I just wanted to throw that in there. It's not always a perfect replacement for a jib shot.
Next question.
Rob Collins in Kansas City, Missouri is asking, how do you decide when to use a drone to get a shot versus another camera control method, like a camera on a wire or on a tall pole?
Kind of a follow-up to the last one, but we'll bring in some other camera control methods. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I've got a funny story about that because it's a lot of times I do some work for a cardboard paper company who makes corrugator machines. And so you'll have a drone inside. You can get the wide shot, of course, and all that's great. But sometimes they're like, we want to see this and that. And I'm like, well, we don't really need to fly it. And I'll just pick up the drone and, just do a Steadicam move and walk it through it. So that's usually how I show the client that we don't have to fly this. It's probably not safe to fly that, and I might lose my drone doing it. So watch this, and you just kind of show them that you can do a different way and get the shot, and it looks great.
Yeah, we had a shot that was inside a factory once that there were some wires hanging, and it was just making the pilot nervous. And so we didn't have any other cameras, so I said, well, let's just tie the drone to the forklift and put the forklift 20 feet in the air. And that's how we got. And then we put the forklift in the slowest move possible. It just kind of drifted across the floor, but we still got our big pan. Courtney?
Yeah, I was just going to say the amount of prep that it requires to do a wire camera, cable cam, it takes a lot of prep. You got to go in the day before. You got to put towers up to hold the cables. You got to figure out where the cables are going to be. You got to worry about the cables interfering with anything else. Drone, you don't have to worry about that. You can come, pull it out of your backpack, throw it up into the air and get your shot and be out. I mean, you guys were talking about flying through dangerous areas. If you've seen that, the Tesla Germany, here, I got a little piece of it we can cut to here, flying through the factory, in Germany, you can imagine flying a drone through these giant aluminum stampers that are very dangerous and flying very close to it and through very narrow ports. This is an amazing piece of drone coverage, and you could never do that with any other type of camera support system. Flying this close to dangerous robotic arms would be, it's a recipe for disaster on anything other than a drone, and even on a drone. I can imagine. I wonder how many of those drones they ended up pressed into the framework of a Tesla to get that shot.
Ronnie?
Well, just another thing. We tend to forget that there are something called camera monopods or sticks or whatever. We have a 3-meter carbon fiber stick that we can put a small camera on the end, even a Insta360 PT set with a long USB cable. That is also possible, and you can get amazing shots by just focusing on the right thing. So we don't have to use drones for everything, but we tend to think that drones is the solution to everything, and that's not entirely right all the time.
Next question.
Rion Smith from Trinidad, West Indies asks, on a scale of 1 to 10, how hard was it to become a licensed pro?
Ronnie?
Well, in Norway, we had a few years back I've been flying drones since 2011, and RC planes, etc. before that, and even RC helicopters and traditional helicopters with gyro on board, as we started this second hour with. So the thing is that depending on the country or the jurisdiction you are in, there could be different types of levels. I know countries in some parts of the world is not that strict, while other countries are really strict. And I think most of these questions will be regarded difficult in United States to have a commercial license. In Norway and most of Europe elsewhere, you also need to have insurance in place. You need to have a operational manual in place. So that's almost like running a full helicopter rental company or helicopter company. You have to have a lot of papers in place, depending on the level of the certification or the type of license you would need to have. So I would say it depends.
Tim?
Yeah, I follow you there, Ronnie. I'll be honest. My experience here in the United States was quite easy. I had RC background, so there is no flight test, though. It's basically a skills test with multiple choice questions. So a good weekend study session, and I've been very good since, even with my recurrence. So I can't speak to Trinidad, but it was a very easy experience for me. I mean, the test is hard. Don't get me wrong. It's something you got to study on, and I learned a lot from it. But it wasn't that painful. I give it a 9. He's asking for a 1 to 10, so I'll give it a 9.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Kyle Hammond in Chicago, Illinois. He wants to know, at what point in drone usage is Part 107 a necessary step?
Hey, we know that guy. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, it's as simple as if you're going to charge for it. Am I right? I think that's what the question's asking. If you're going to do a commercial job and get paid to do it, you have to have your Part 107. It's as simple as that. Am I answering the question right? Yeah,
no,
I
think that's absolutely true. And the line, it got really tricky. Back, I mean, if you look, let's say 10 years ago, when drones are first starting to come onto the scene, the Part 107 was a little trickier than it is now. I think you had to actually go in somewhere. Now there's an online component. And I think they've, at the same time as they've made it more kind of locked down in terms of reporting and in terms of needing to have your identifiers, and that wasn't the case 10 years ago, but the test was a lot harder. Now they're demanding that more and more people get certified, but they've also lowered that test a little bit. So we've kind of come back, and we're at sort of a middle ground now.
Yeah, I have a couple of clients that actually, when they started making me legally prove that I had the Part 107, that's when I was like, oh, I guess I better go get that. So that's what made it happen for me.
And whether you have the Part 107 or not, it is important to understand what are the rules. What are the rules about your Class G airspace that is below 400 feet where it's unrestricted? How close are you to a hospital that has a heliport? How close are you to a school? How close are you to buildings or other or airports or things like there? Whether or not you actually go and get that Part 107, if you make a mistake in the wrong place, you're still liable, whether you have that license or not. So it behooves you to understand the limitations and understand the laws, so that way you are comfortable and confident that what you're doing isn't going to put you at risk. Next question.
All right. Next question comes in from Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. He says, my old DJI Spark needed ND filters. Do the newer drones still need this?
Good, Ronnie.
Short answer, yes. This has to do with small integrated cameras that doesn't have low enough ISO, or if you would like to have the correct motion blur in the imagery. So quick answer is yes, and this has to do with the cinematic feeling of the thing. And I would always suggest that you evaluate if you need that. There are situations where ND filters is not the greatest thing, and if you decide to go with ND filters, please make sure that you have the rather good one. Cheap ND filters has a tendency to give you results that are less than desirable.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up that I still use them. I buy them for everything, including the Mini 4 Pro, which is the small newest one that I have. It just gives you that better pop of the sky. It's less about, I remember earlier days, CJ, you were talking about your Phantom. I had a Phantom 2 with a GoPro on it that always got that prop motion blur that you could see, like if the sun came through it, and we would use ND to counteract a lot of that stuff. Nowadays, it's less about that and more about just the cinematography. It makes your sunny day video look better.
Yeah, at the end of the day, you're shooting in broad daylight with no ability to put a flag on the shot because you're up in the sky and you're moving around. So we've all got I feel like we all have a little Velcro pouch of graduated NDs. And anyway, next question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas asks, what's a decent drone for real estate 3D scans?
So if you have pretty much any drone that can do a 360 is going to help you out, whether you're using a video or you're taking a series of pictures. You're going to have to play a little bit with the angles so that you can take that video and put it into a program like Polycam, or take it in and make a point cloud like I was showing earlier with that web ODM. But in this case, it's as long as you can have it do a very repeatable orbit and that you can get it from a couple different heights, it's all about technique in this case. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, you might look at the new DJI Neo because it's under 130 grams. So it doesn't require a license. You could fly it inside, using the FPV mode to get those really wide angle shots. It's got a really wide angle lens. It only has a single axis gimbal, just vertical. But it does have stabilization in post so that you can stabilize it and just fly it around inside the house once you get pretty good. If it hits something, it's not going to shatter the chandelier or create scars on the walls because of the prop guards and the fact that it only weighs 130 grams. Even if you crash into the real estate agent, they probably won't suffer any damage.
Next question.
Samuel Norvik in Norway, do you have experience with FPV drones? Is this the future of drone filming?
Tim?
I know we've talked about it a little bit, and I just keep saying, yes, that is a iconic shot that people want. It's not good for everything. That's kind of what I've learned in my business. We have one that we don't use a lot because some of our clients, it's just not the type of shot that we need. But in this world where we see these videos of all that wonderful choreography, as I said earlier, and the way you can move through things easily, it is a tool that is necessary, and we need professionals that know how to do it. So I think it's a future shot. It's always going to be a shot that people want. Just like I look back, 20 years ago when the GoPro came out and we would put them up in the corner of a room and it just became the iconic thing that you needed. Then the drones came along. It's an iconic tool shot that you need. FPV is one of those as well.
Ronnie?
Yeah, and as a part of a live broadcast, we can also use the FPV. We had an example a few years back in a type of competition called a jam. It's actually hip hop, which has also been a part of the Olympics this year with some crazy performers. And we had this crazy dude flying his micro FPV drone, feeding us the HDMI live feed into the switcher. And we switched live, having him rotating above the dance floor, around the dance floor, just outside the audience where they were sitting, and making amazing shots that never could be done with a jib or similar. And he also had this kind of model where he flew out a few hundred meters and had this overview. I wish I could play this back to you guys because that is awesome. You can have a look at Arctic Jam. They have a YouTube channel. You can look it up there and have a watch. It's amazing.
Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Modern drones, how do we get here? or how did we get here? What has been the arc of model RC consumer products and more professional offerings that have matured in technology over the years?
Tim?
Yeah, one of the biggest questions, and this is just my world in the drones. I know he's talking about the history of RC as well, so maybe others can speak on that. But one of the biggest questions I get asked when I'm out shooting somewhere is, hey, how long does that battery last? So to me, the battery technology is the history that I've seen with all the drones that I've flown over the last 10 years. Because it started with for me, it was the S1000 by DJI, that you could hang a DSLR off of. And the weight to battery ratio, 7 minutes tops if I was lucky. And now we're up to a drone like this, the Mini 4, that can fly for 30 plus minutes. So that is the arc in the history of drones that I keep talking about with people, because cameras are always getting better. We all know with our smartphones, every time a new iPhone comes out, the camera's a little bit better and we all get excited about it or something like that. The cameras are always pretty good. I mean, my Inspire 2 is 6 years old and it has a fantastic camera on it. Battery life is the history of drones for me. It has gotten better and better and better, and I'm sure that's just what's going to keep happening.
Courtney, real quick.
Yeah, when they started out with the Phantom, you had to be very good at flying it. Otherwise, you'd fly into a wall. Nowadays,
right.
they're so automated with the GPS control, and they all have and so many people lost drones in the early days because it'd fly out of range of your controller, and it's gone. Look, it's going up in the sky. Nowadays, it's automated and GPS controlled. They all have return to home automatically. If they lose connection to your controller, they'll automatically turn around and fly back as long as they got enough battery power. So that kind of automation and the repeatability of the GPS control, like Tim was saying earlier, where you can set up almost like a motion control shot to follow along, and it'll retrace that exact step for multiple passes, and then you can composite those multiple passes together. That's how far it's evolved with the automation and the GPS control to become that precise.
Next question.
Talalak Lopez Waterman, who is traveling somewhere in the United States right now. Audio, is there any way to make them quieter? My guess is no.
Tim?
Yeah, I think he's nailed it. It's the age-old struggle, because here we are in the political campaign era where there's a lot of, I only speak to that because I've done a few videos, ads, and it's always a person who wants to talk and then the big flyaway shot. And no matter how you try it, they always have to re-record it at some point and try to match their lips. So I've never experienced a way to make it quieter. I will say that small drone behind me is pretty quiet, but I wouldn't want to use that for certain cinematography, certain shots. So yeah, I think it's a hard thing to do.
Courtney?
They make some props now that are quieter, that cause less noise. But your solution there is to just find an audio recorder or transmitter that has noise removal. The AI noise removal has gotten so good it can pull out that drone noise pretty easily.
Next question.
Rayon Smith in Trinidad, West Indies is asking, how best can someone new learn to fly and capture video, as well as someone intermediate become a pro?
Tim?
Practice. I mean, you basically need to get your hands on a drone and just start flying. I mean, that was how I learned it. You pick it up, you get one, and let's face it, you're going to crash it. You're going to run into a tree here and there. So fly safe, but get your hands on those sticks and keep your fingers on those sticks and keep practicing.
Ronnie?
Just really quick, there are simulators that can make you have a fun time. Just dry running everything and make sure that you have the right feeling in your fingers when you are moving the sticks, etc. So find yourself a simulator software. Get yourself a loaner remote control or the control surface, and you're good to go. And train a lot, and you will be better every day.
Next question.
Ryan Thomason, Houston, Texas, is asking, what are the best places to find the rules for flying drones in the USA, and are the rules FAA or state/local based?
Tim?
I've always found great resources online just by typing in where you're flying. DJI, of course, has a great flight map, but there's also, I'm trying to look up, the app that I've been using is Aloft or Air Control. Wonderful resource if you're standing there, or if you know you're traveling somewhere. It's basically like a Google Maps or an Apple Maps where you can zoom in and it will tell you the rules and regulations around that area. Now, you have to know that with the NOTAMs, things will change. So, for instance, I was down in Florida near Cape Canaveral. I could not fly, but I put in for a waiver, and after a launch had happened, then they gave me the approval. So just you know that if it says no, sometimes it's based on something that's happening then, so you just have to wait and see if that's happening when you're going to actually be in that area.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, there's interactive websites that the FAA maintains that shows the no-fly zones on a GIS type map. So you can just go online to FAA UAS data map and look there for the actual FAA no-fly zones. But you got to look into the fact that cities do have city ordinances against drone flying in public. So even though the FAA says, sure, no problem, stay under 400 feet, you're good. And then the city will arrest you and bring you to task and fine you big amounts of money if they catch you flying within a no-fly zone in a city.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Samuel Nordvik in Norway is asking, how do you use and compose a drone shot for a live stream?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, what we do, I'll just speak to the world that I use broadcast in is graduations. We have a college here in town that hires us every year to live stream their ceremonies, and they love the drone shot. So I use the Inspire 2. I'll just talk about the hardware with a separate remote control. It has a transmitter that's used to control the camera. I don't use that a lot, so I use that as my downlink. And with a simple HDMI to a converter, you don't have to have the converter. It's just how we get it into our live truck, our satellite truck. It's a wonderful signal, and it gets a wonderful shot that can be used over and over and over.
Next question.
Rayon Smith in Trinidad, West Indies asks, any videos of your work, Tim, or place to go see it? Would love to see 15 seconds of wow.
Sure. Let's put one up. I've got one up here, so I'll share my screen with you guys. This is basically just my demo reel, so we'll start it off the top, and I can just talk through a couple of the questions. Are we seeing it okay?
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So, obviously, cinematography is my forte, so that's what we're going for here is just magic shots for the client. A lot of this is around St. Louis, of course, and I said I do a lot of ag work, so you'll see that, but mix in some other things. 10 plus years of experience with anything from a Phantom all the way up to the Inspire 2.
And Tim, are you recording in log and then color grading these videos?
Most of the time, yes. There's sometimes when it's quick and dirty, and sometimes a client wants you to just hand over the files, and they will tell you, no, just have a color profile on them. But 99% of what we do comes back into house here, and I am an editor, so I like it log, so I can match it to our other Canon cameras, or if someone's shooting on a Sony FS7 or something like that. That way we can mix the footage properly. But also, I fall into fix it in post. So I'm that guy who loves the challenge of making it work.
Go ahead, Rian, real quick.
Yeah. So is there any like a link, a website we could check your work on?
Absolutely. Sure. Our website here at Spot is spot.studio. You can get profiles of all of us, and our demo work is out there. We're a full service, not that I'm selling us, we're a full service post-production and production house here in St. Louis, Missouri.
Next question.
This one's for me. What's a decent small drone that isn't crazy expensive that I can fly in a small indoor space easily?
And Tim?
Yeah, Courtney's been nailing it on is it the Neo, the new one? I haven't had experience with it, but that thing looks amazing for entry level. Yeah, it's entry level, but it's also I can see me using it for different things. You know, besides it just being able to fit in your pocket, it's just looks easy to use. The camera quality looks fantastic. I also highly recommend these Mavic Minis. The Mavic Mini Pro, I've used the 3 and now have the 4. Fantastic, and again, something that can basically fit in your pocket or a backpack.
Next question.
Peter Moore in Auckland, New Zealand is asking, DJI is the gorilla, and for good reason. They make quality products, but are there third-party brackets for attaching an iPhone or Samsung to one of these to take video? Will the DJI software interact with an iPhone if that's your preferred camera?
So I know that like when you've looked at the Apple events, they have done drone shots with an iPhone attached to the bottom of it. But most of the time, what they're doing is not so much the DJI software working on the phone, is they're recording from the iPhone to a hard drive that's up there or onto the local memory. And then the camera or the actual drone flying is a completely separate part. So if you're attaching a third-party camera to one of these drones, you have to start treating the drone just like it's a motion control system, and then the camera's the camera, two separate things. Next question.
Another question for me. I was watching the first episode of Treadstone on Amazon. Noticed there were quite a few drone shots. It really took me out of it because it seemed like the shots were at a much higher frame rate. Why would they do this?
Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, this is where we all just become film critics. We all have a style that we like to see, and I don't have the answer. It's subjective to the director of photography and whoever's producing the stuff. Quite frankly, I love to watch for drone shots and things. But when it's even a period piece, like stagecoaches and things like that, but then you see a drone shot, it kind of takes me out of it. So I think that's what you're talking about, Alexander, but it's all subjective.
Courtney?
This is where your ND filter comes in really handy, because on those drone cameras, if you put an ND on there, it makes the exposure time longer, so you get more motion blur, and it looks more filmic and slower. If it's a bright day outside and you don't have an ND filter on, the sample rate gets really high and it looks very kind of stuttery, and it doesn't look natural for a fast-moving drone shot. So that can take you out, and you kind of lose that filmic look of the motion blur of a 24-frame shot.
And last question.
Paul Wallace in Austin, Texas. Is there such a thing as an autonomous drone that will recharge itself and fly intervals daily?
There is. If you look at the DJI Enterprise part of their website, they'll have one section for the Phantom RTK, which will allow you to map on a local radio wave as opposed to just GPS. In the RTK system, it has a special antenna on it, but there's also the DJI dock. Let me see what that looks like.
I haven't had experience with it, but it looks cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's got IPX55 waterproofing. It has all the controls for remote operation. But the thing that just blows my mind is when they give you this shot where it's actually going ahead and landing inside this dock while raining outside. And this is designed for people who are doing land surveying or mining operations, really, really heavy industry. And that's at a completely remote location to the operator. So there's also going to be some regulatory and licensing things that you need to be careful of when you're looking at that kind of stuff. The DJI dock. When I got into looking at how to do aerial mapping, it kind of opened my eyes to this whole world of just, man, it just blows my mind. Courtney, real quick.
Yeah, they're just using it for power line inspection, and you can run a prescribed pathway every day and capture video so that you know what the state of that area was at any time, and go back in time. That's also using for surveillance for border control. I think they're using those where they dock and then they run a regular up and down the border pathways.
Also, if you have if you were surveying whether it was agriculture or whether it was large-scale construction projects, if you have that drone run at a specified interval every single day, you can keep track of how did materials move on my job site? Did anybody, abscond with some of my dirt? How many houses did we put up in the last week? There's all those sorts of things that we've been able to unlock because, you don't need to hire a helicopter every time you want to take an aerial photo. Thank you all so much. This was such a wonderful discussion. Tim, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you here. Please come back anytime. It doesn't just have to be about drones.
Right on.
You've got the kind of experience that makes you a kindred spirit to us here at Office Hours. So thank you for being here. Also, thank you to all the panel for being here. We appreciate your contributions every single day. We're a lot less smart individually than we are all together, and we have literally an international panel of drone pilots today. That is incredible. Just think about that for a second. It's so incredible. So we appreciate everyone in the first hour and in the second hour freely sharing your expertise. Also, thank you to the back-end crew. We went a couple minutes over today, but we were really into it about the drones, and I had to take advantage of especially having Tim's expertise on the panel. But we thank the small village that gets up every single day, stays up late, wakes up early, wherever they are in the world, making us look and sound good, designing the back-end software, mixing our audio, getting us out to you. It's just wonderful. And lastly, to our producers, thank you for asking the questions and keeping this show going. Your questions drive the show every single day, and you keep us current, keep us on our toes. And we run not only on your questions, but also on your generosity. So if you like what you're seeing, consider supporting us at officehours.global/donate. Slaloc traversal today, we traveled 96,000 miles. That's 154,000 kilometers, 757 million bananas for scale. Let's see you in after hours. Tim, that was great. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you guys. Sorry I didn't have more visual aids.
No.
No, that was perfect, Tim. That was perfect.
Thank you for asking to play the demo. I didn't know when to throw it up, but I had it ready. So
if had Rian not asked that question, I would have asked towards the end, like, how can we find you? Because your stuff looks really, really cool.
Awesome. Thank you.
Really
so
cool,
much.
bro.
Yeah.
Like, how many years you been doing this total?
Well, editing, it's almost 30 years, honestly. And again, I can't reiterate the fact that I learned to fly them was so I could get out of the edit suites a lot. So, but 10 years. I think I started my first drone job was in August of 2014. And that was with a Phantom that I learned how to fly the day before.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah.
And Ronnie, are those drones always in your background, or did you get gussied up just for today?
Just for today.
Look at that.
Nice.
I saw that. I was like, look, those are new. Wait a minute.
I don't leave these here either, Ronnie. Yeah. People keep walking by my office.
The crashed ones.